A very good morning or good afternoon. It's past 12 o'clock to all of you. Colonel Narula for a kind introduction. Dr. Karulakar, distinguished people in the audience. First, at the outset, thank you, DIIA, for inviting me here and giving me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you. But at the outset, lest we forget, I would like to all of you to join me in thanking the young DIIA team of Kaustubh, Swapna, Srishti, and all who made this possible. Thank you very much. I was asked to, the topic given to me by Kaustubh and company is impact of indigenization. Being a professor, I keep picking up holes in everything. I was worrying for a long time whether impact of indigenization or impact on indigenization. But let me touch on both the aspects. Being in Pune, I'm remembered of Vijay Bhatkar, who was the first director or chairman of CDAC. I think in 80s, when the country were in its, the nation was in its throes because we were not able to predict monsoons properly. Prediction of monsoon or prediction of weather is quite a complex task, involves a lot of number crunching. And we didn't have the wherewithal to do the number crunching. What is that? Basically big computing. Today we call it as high performance computers. So we tried to reach out to create supercomputers. And America, in its wisdom, decided that they will not be giving out any technology to India because at that point of time, I think India was closer to Russia, whatever. So I think it's Rajiv Gandhi, who was the then Prime Minister, decided that we'll build our own supercomputer. We didn't call it as a supercomputer, we called it as parallel processing. So the first series of Param were initiated. And lo and behold, in Pune, it was a joint effort headed by CDAC. NAL was involved, DRDO was involved to a certain extent, and of course IMD was involved because they were going to be the users. So 1991, I guess, they have started, and 1995, the first series of Param has emanated out of Pune. What was the effect? CRE put its tail under its wherever it has to be put, and then came back to India saying that we would like to give you the next generation of CRE supercomputer. India rejected that, and after a couple of years, to cut a long story short, CRE has filed for bankruptcy. So this is a fact which can be the impact of indigenization. So it will have far-reaching effects. It will have far-reaching implications, if not for today, for tomorrow. Just to, I think yesterday or a couple of days back, SIPRI, which is a Stockholm-based institute, which apparently works on peace initiatives, but does a lot of defense stuff. It has brought out its report, which says, it was a statistic, 2012 to 2016, the world's largest importer of defense technologies is India. People were bandying about a statistic of 70% imports. I personally believe that it can be higher. So we are the largest importer of defense technologies today. This is quite a troubling news. for a nation, morning somebody was alluding to nation of 1.34 billion potentially powerful people. Why do we have to import technologies at this day and age? Let me go back a bit into the thought process of these imports. Time and again, there have been a number of debates involving very wise men and women, talking about, or rather pointing out an issue which all of us are aware, whether Indians in India can really build good technologies or good systems. This is a powerful, debatable point. And we have a dime a dozen reasons how Indians in India have failed to build powerful technologies, especially from a defense perspective. I'm just going to go a bit backwards and just try to address and share with you how this building of technologies comes into play. The armed forces in general, anywhere in the world, would always have a requirement of very complex technologies and state-of-art technologies. And these complex and state-of-art technologies are really dynamic in time. Whatever is the necessity today need not be the necessity tomorrow. What does it mean to the common man is the technological goals, the technological deliverables keep changing. Those do keep changing because of the continuously evolving strategic requirements, continuously evolving scenarios with a complex field in the defense domain. So how do they arrive at these requirements? I think Parlekar, sir, pardon me for not pronouncing your name properly, was alluding to a word called qualitative requirements. The generally qualitative requirements are put forth by armed forces, saying that, look here, we are tasked to protect the nations, any armed forces. So we would like to have these ABC technologies with ABC specifications. If you dig deep and delve into the thought process which goes into the framing of qualitative requirements, it pays rich dividends. How do people frame qualitative requirements? There are very wise people sitting in service headquarters and scientific organizations. But most of the time, the framing of qualitative requirements is interlaced with threat perceptions and the technological capabilities which one desires to meet those threat perceptions. As I said, threat perceptions keep changing. They are evolving. They are very, very dynamic in nature. So how do you allude to a qualitative requirement is primarily based on two things. One is a priori knowledge. Two is observational learning. Let me slightly stress on what these two are. A priori knowledge is something akin to all of us know that 2 + 2 is 4 because we were tutored. We were educated that 2 + 2 is 4. That's a good example. Observational learning is if a small kid, infant who's crawling, goes and touches a hot plate, he removes his hand. That's observational learning. He understands, he learns that it is no good to touch that plate. He may not be knowing it is hot. That's a definition we give throughout the ages of our learning exercise. So these are the two things. These are complementary in nature. By and large, my perception and my observation is threat perceptions and qualitative requirements are basically an outcome of a priori biases or a priori learnings. And this is very well entrenched in India. There is, I don't say 100%, but there is a strong skewness towards achieving whatever technologies the developed country, in our parlance say, the Gora has. If the Americans or the French has an Exocet missile, we think that Exocet missile is the panacea for all our defense problems. So this is where the first stumbling block comes. So once those kinds of qualitative requirements emanate, so those qualitative requirements are put forth to the Indian counterparts, scientific R&D organizations or the Indian industry. But people don't realize there's a long gestation period involved in developing new technologies. As I said, these technologies are highly complex in nature. They are interdisciplinary. So they require their own time. And if you don't have the wherewithal, it's never a level playing field. So whatever qualitative requirements the armed forces keep on changing. We would not be in a position to meet those in given time frames. So time frame is another crucial question. So one of the problems which armed forces throw at Indian industry as well as Indian R&D organizations is they are never in time. There's always a time overrun and a cost overrun. But this needs to be tackled. If it needs to be tackled, we need to really tackle at the core level of, let's look at who is framing these qualitative requirements. I'm sure people who are framing the qualitative requirements are very wise, but they have their own biases. I'm telling all this because there was, till a few years ago, there was a blind belief and faith that technological solution or technological solutionism is the answer to most of the defense problems. We all know that technology can win wars, but we are also aware that technology can lose wars. If you take the example of British going all the way to Falklands with their Exocet missiles, I mean, they were not successful. One good example is, I think Commodore Bhargava was mentioning, one of our DRDO or Dr. Rajan was mentioning, what is good for goose is not necessarily good for gander. And that is very, very true in the defense industry. So I'm just taking a cue from Colonel Narula, who said, we have to think, we have to get involved, and for that, I'm sure facilitation will be done through DIIA in ab initio thinking process itself. I mean, everybody is worried about the nation. It's not the domain of the government servants alone. I was a government servant. It is the domain of everybody. So we should bring in that change in perceptions, change in mindsets. And probably next time, Rahul, when you are meeting Nirmala Sitharaman, or I had the occasion to be an advisor to Parikar. So I was always hitting with this thought process that we should hit at the core of the problem. If you let me slightly go to now, I think Kaustubh has given a series of questions, need for indigenization and its proven impact in the Indian defense sector. I've talked about CDAC, Param versus Cray supercomputer. How does value addition happen in a high-tech product service value chain? Let me touch a bit on this. My predecessor, previous speaker has already spoken about that. Symbiosis. All of us need to hold hands together, and then only we can become a very strong nation. Synergize all our activities. Collaboration, not confrontation, amongst ourselves. Everybody will have a niche area of expertise and technical competence, core competence. So let's collaborate, let's synergize, and that's a process of symbiosis. Thinking out of the box. Let me give you two good examples of, I was part of DRDO earlier, and then I came out of DRDO. Now I'm in Visakhapatnam. I work with a number of young students, second year, third year engineering college students. Visakhapatnam, as you know, is not like Pune or Bombay or Delhi. It's a tier 2 or tier 3, whatever classification you give. So with those boys and girls, I went and challenged the government. ADA had a problem, Aeronautical Development Authority, when they were trying to do their project on AMCA, Advanced Medium Combat Range Aircraft. One of the requirements was we need to know what is the environment ahead of a fast-moving aircraft. Now this AMCA fast-moving aircraft was supposed to fly at 3 to 5 Mach speeds. So the only solution is a solution which involves light. How do you sense the environment ahead of a moving aircraft which is doing 1,500 meters per second? Only light is a tool. So I took up that challenge. I said, I'll do it. I'll give you a subsystem which can do this. And believe me, they have given me 1.5 years because the AMCA's first tranche of funding is going to be over, and there's going to be an audit objection if we exceed that. So in this 1.5 years, we produced a subsystem in 1 year's time. And who's my workforce? All my students. So all the students whose median age is about 18, 19 years old. Some of the advanced technology, photonic technology, we called it as Tarani. We gave it an Indian name. Tarani is a ray of light in Sanskrit. And we submitted the system for evaluation. And they said, no, you should get involved in the evaluation and you should prove it to us. Fair enough. Then we said, give us a wind tunnel. The NAL's wind tunnel was not available because it has a long timetable, time frames, so you need to go and book your time slot, where NAL has hypersonic wind tunnels. And then they said, why don't you use your DRDO connections at NSTL, one of the labs in Visakhapatnam? They had a wind tunnel, and they said, why don't you use that wind tunnel? It was a subsonic wind tunnel. So I couldn't get a slot from NSTL because there were some issues with that. So I decided I'll build a wind tunnel myself. So we built a wind tunnel. Whenever I say I, consider it as a we. We built a wind tunnel, subsonic wind tunnel, which is hardly about 10 feet long, but it is capable of giving us speeds up to 70 to 80 meters per second, which is quite good enough for doing all kinds of tests with what people use for wind tunnels. Not hypersonic, but subsonic. And a lot of innovations went into that, and all these innovations were channelized through the students. This wind tunnel was built, mind you, in 1 week's time with a funding, I'm not a rich guy, of less than 50,000 rupees. So this is what indigenization can do. Indians are very good with frugal engineering. We call it as jugaad. We are very, very good because we don't have money to waste. So this is a good example that what can be achieved. There is no dearth of knowledge here, but there is a dearth of mindset. The scope of any problem can be addressed in a given environment. You need to create that environment. So what I urge all of you participants is, there are millions and millions of things which we can achieve by synergizing all our competences together. If we let go our egos, we have unforeseen barriers amongst us. If we let go that, and we have a shared values. The shared value is building a stronger nation. That's a very noble shared value. So let's work towards that, and I'm sure that anything is possible. So this is my take for the strategies which MSME can adapt. We are seeing a considerable change in the mindset in the government of today. Government is more interested in Make in India, whatever that means. But what we should strive for is ab initio innovation, not tinkering of technology, which we are very good, which is essential. But if you start looking at the problem, the core problem can be chosen by MSME, which may not be a problem today, but in your wisdom, if you think that this is an issue which needs solution, and I can think of a better solution, that we should be looking at an extremely strong India by 2030. Thank you very much for your time.